Okay, so I stop here. We already completed this part. So now on next one, this one dah kan this one kan? Yang saya share the article tu. Dah kan? Ni kan? Four-phase process to interview protocol refinement.
Dah share doktor.
Dah tu untuk that one, that part Okay, next one, trustworthiness in qualitative study. So this, yang ni belum kan?
Belum.
So this one so as I said earlier, in quantitative we have the term reliability and validity to ensure the instrument quality or the quality of quantitative study. But in qualitative we use the term trustworthiness, kebolehpercayaan. Kalau kita translate dalam bahasa Melayu, nama dia kebolehpercayaan juga. Okay, kalau dalam quanti the term we use validity, but in qualitative we use the term trustworthiness. Okay, trustworthiness in qualitative study. So there are a few ways that we can use, there are a few methods that we can use to ensure the data trustworthiness, the trustworthiness of a qualitative study. The first one, okay, so there are 4 aspects of trustworthiness that a qualitative researcher must establish, starting from your research question until the end of your study. So these are the things that you need to secure. The first one is credibility. Second one, dependability. Third one, transferability and confirmability. So ada 4 benda yang kita kena buat, kita kena secure to ensure the trustworthiness of qualitative study. Okay, what is credibility? Credibility ni any ways that you use to ensure the reliable result from researcher perspective. Okay, so you need to make sure that the presented data that you have are credible or are reliable. Okay, so the techniques that you can use, the first one is triangulation and member checking. Ini yang pertama, credibility. Credibility adalah kita pastikan we make sure the data that we have, the result that we presented are reliable from the perspective of researcher. Okay, data kita tu boleh dipercayai. So macam mana kita nak tentukan, macam mana kita nak pastikan our findings are reliable, are credible? First by using triangulation. Okay, so triangulation ni involve using methods, data sources, observer or theory. So basically triangulation ni you use at least 3 methods to reconfirm your finding, to ensure that your findings are consistent. So dia kata multiple methods, data sources, observers or theories in order to get a more complete understanding of the phenomenon being studied. Okay, kita sahkan dapatan kita tu yang the one that we collected from our respondent with another sources. Okay, so at least we use 3 methods. That's why the name is triangulation. Okay, so it is used to make sure that the research findings are robust, rich, comprehensive, and well developed. Okay, so there are 4 types of triangulation that researchers can employ. The first one, sama ada you employ the methods triangulation. Okay, so the first one, this one involve utilizing different data collection methods in order to check the consistency of the finding. You guna beberapa kaedah pengumpulan data. You employ different types, at least 3 types of data collection methods to ensure the consistency of the finding. Next one, triangulation of sources. Okay, so this involve utilizing different data sources within the same method. Okay, so this could be if you are using 2 different population, interviewing people at different point in times in private versus public setting, or comparing people with different perspective. So ini study besar lah di triangulation of sources ni. Biasanya kita guna methods triangulation ni pun dah already should be enough, okay, for a qualitative study. Next one, you can use analyst triangulation. Okay, so this involve utilizing another analyst to review the findings or using multiple observer and analyst. Okay, so this is helpful to illuminate blind spots in the analysis process. Kita guna beberapa penganalisis data. Okay, next one, theoretical triangulation, so which involve using multiple theoretical perspective to analyze the data. So biasanya yang kita boleh apply basically the method triangulation and theoretical triangulation lah. Yang dua ni dia susah sikit lah, it takes time. So itu triangulation. Next, the second ways is by using member checking. Member checking to secure your data, your study credibility. Okay, macam mana nak buat member checking ni? Okay, it is a technique that qualitative researcher use to establish credibility. This is a technique in which the data, interpretation and conclusion are shared with the participant. Okay, kita punya transcribe tu, the one that we already transcribed, we share with the respondent. The conclusion that we made pun we can share with the respondent to see their either to get their feedback, either the interpretation, either the transcription that we made is accurate and according to what they meant or not. Okay, so it allows participant to clarify that their intentions were, correct errors and provide additional information if necessary. So this method, if you use in your study, you need to state clearly, kena mention clearly dalam in your chapter 3. Okay, credibility boleh guna dua, triangulation and member checking. Okay, next one, dependability. Okay, so dependability ni referring to the consistency and reproducibility of your study. Okay, kalau dalam quality, the name is replicate. That your study can can be replicated. Okay, so it is refers to the consistency and reliability of the research findings and the degree to which research procedures are documented, how well you documented your study, how well you document your study, how detailed it is, and how much it is producible by future researchers. Step by step, kita kena report betul-betul. Okay, so it allows someone outside the research to follow, audit and critique the research process if necessary. Kalau let's say the future researcher interested with your study, then they can replicate. Okay, replicate your study. So to check the dependability of a qualitative study, so one looks to see if the researcher has been careless or made mistakes in conceptualizing the study, collecting the data, interpreting the findings and reporting result. So this one you need to secure lah. You need to be very detailed in writing or in reporting each process or each step that you take or that you took during your qualitative study. Kena report betul-betul. Okay. Next one, transferability. Okay, so the result transferability ni referring to the result obtained from another context or situation. Okay, results obtained from other context or situation. Okay, dan boleh ke tak kita ni the finding ni can be transferred to another setting as well. Okay, so transferability in qualitative research is synonymous with generalization, generalizability or external validity in qualitative. Term dia sama, transfer. Even though the main intention is we do not have any interest to make generalization, but if possible, if our study can also be applicable to another setting, it would be very good lah. Walaupun dia bukanlah kita punya main interest. Okay, so transferability is established by providing readers with evidence that the research studies finding could be applicable to other settings, context, situation, times and population. Okay, kalau ada, kalau boleh. Okay, so it is important to note that you are as the researcher cannot prove that the research studies finding will be applicable. Okay, instead your job as the researcher is to provide the evidence that it could be applicable. Ada tak applicable? That's why it is very important for you to provide details regarding your study, and then you pick at least one theory lah to support your study. Okay, so this may sound tricky, okay, but according to Lincoln and Guba, okay, they said that it is based on it is in summary not the naturalist task to provide an index of transferability for qualitative researcher. Dia bukan compulsory. Okay, it is his or her responsibility to provide the database that makes transferability judgment possible on the part of potential appliers. Kita the main interest is not for transferability, but if let's say we manage to provide the accurate data, it is also possible our finding it is applicable to another setting as well, yang lebih kurang sama. Kalau kita manage, kita prepare betul-betul data kita tu cantik, accurate and so on, dia boleh sebenarnya secure the transferability ni. Okay. Okay. Next one, confirmability. Okay, so it is referring to the level of confidence that the researcher studies finding are based on the participants' narrative and words rather than potential research bias. Ni kat sini macam mana kita nak reduce the researcher bias, walaupun kita tahu it is it is impossible to avoid the researcher bias, tapi by securing the confirmability ni kita boleh buktikan yang seboleh-bolehnya kita tak ada bias tu. Any question? Ada soalan tak? Ada. Okay, so confirmability is there to verify that the findings are shaped by participants. Okay, so our finding tu is solely based on our respondent. Okay, and then there are a couple of techniques that we can apply. The first one by using audit trail. Okay, so audit trail ni apa? Audit trail ni is when a qualitative researcher details the process of data collection, data analysis and interpretation of the data. Okay, so you record what topics were unique and interesting during the data collection, write down your thoughts about coding, provide a rationale for why you merge codes together and explain what the themes mean. The process of data analysis tu you record step by step. Okay, audit trail. Maksudnya each process tu kenapa, why you choose the themes, why you come up with the codes. Okay, you need to provide justification ataupun the reason why the codes appear in your finding. Okay, so that's why you need to have a cross check with your theory, with past studies, kena ada close cross checking, audit trail. Okay, next one, reflexivity. So in which it is a technique that is useful in qualitative study when particularly in phenomenology design. Okay, so reflexivity ni is an attitude that a researcher adopts when collecting and analysing the data. Yang ni dah discuss dah sebelum ni, ada sikit kat depan. Reflexivity. Okay, so a qualitative researcher must look at his or her own background. Macam mana kita punya bias, our background, our study, our education background, our experience, okay, can position ourselves during the interview or during the data collection process ataupun during the data interpretation process. Okay, so dia akan mempengaruhi the way, the position to see how this influence the data process. For example, while we select the topic, for example, we select the topic because we have experience. We have a past experience regarding the phenomenon. Contohnya choosing the method, why we prefer to use quali rather than quanti. Okay, analyzing the data. Okay, when we interpret the data, why we give such meanings to that to certain terms, for example, and presenting the conclusion. Macam mana kita conclude? Because everybody have their own preference. Sometimes some researcher ni, because they have background related to psychology, then when they come up with the conclusion, they prefer or tend to provide the conclusion ni from the psychological perspective. Dia depend pada orang tu. Okay, so in order to achieve reflexivity, so a qualitative researcher can keep and maintain a reflexive journal. Think of this as a diary where you reflect on what is happening in the research process with regard to your values and interests. So that's why ni selari dengan apa yang you all kena mention dulu, you all punya background. Reflect balik diri sendiri. Okay, why you give such meaning, why not this, why not that. Okay. Okay, so any question for developing interview protocol for qualitative studies? Ada soalan? Tak ada kan?
Audit trail tu kita buat sendiri, doktor. Kita ni sendirilah, bukan kita mention dalam kita punya dalam kita punya paper tu.
We mention, but we explain what we did. Kita buat audit trail tu untuk to secure the trustworthiness tu, one of it kita securekan the credibility ataupun kita apply the audit trail tu. Okay, kita apply audit trail, tapi apa yang kita buat? Kita kena present apa yang kita buat. The elemen 4 tu kalau boleh ada dalam kita punya kualitatif, tapi mungkin ada yang tak boleh, ada yang kita tak boleh establish. For example, transferability. Macam tu memang buat kualitatif ni memang susah lah, kita pun tak expect. Tetapi bila kita documented, when we document, when we detail document our step in qualitative study ni, dah start daripada data collection lah. Yang paling critical sebenarnya starting from data collection. Kita detailkan bila kita macam mana kita enter the field, how we develop the research question, how we develop the interview protocol. Kita detailkan macam mana pembentukan tu. Okay, daripada RQ kita, we come up with the research protocol. And then before we enter the field, what we did, what we do. For example, we run the pilot study. Sebab pilot study in qualitative study, when you proceed with pilot study, you are actually already in the field. Dah masuk dah pun lapangan. Kalau kuanti belum lagi. Kalau dalam kuanti you masuk lapangan bila you entering the field only when you distribute the actual instrument, questionnaire. But in qualitative, bila kita dah buat pilot tu sebenarnya kita dah masuk lapangan dah start lapangan. Even though it is not yet the actual data, tapi from the finding that we got, that we obtained from the pilot tu, it is already can be used for actual finding. Walaupun tujuan asal dia adalah nak refine the interview protocol. Okay. Nak masuk.
So Dr. Nomi,
Yeah.
perhaps the first interview can be considered as a pilot interview, and then we can refine our interview protocol, and kita boleh tambah by our interview protocol based on the first interview. But then the first interview can be considered as our data bila kita dah buat dalam kita punya finding?
Yes, it can be considered.
Okay.
And then even your interview protocol is evolving. Your interview protocol and as well as your research question can be evolving during the whole process. Dia boleh berubah.
So here our interview protocol, our research question is very dynamic, subject to the situation, subject to the phenomenon that yang kita hadapi during our interview session.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nomi.
So that's why for qualitative researchers, it is strongly recommended for you to directly analyze your finding after you completed the first interview. Every time you completed the interview, do the transcribing, do the data analysis, so that you can see what is lacking, what are lacking in your findings, so that you can improve in the second or in the next interview. Kita akan improve lagi. Apa lagi yang tak cukup? Apa yang kita ada ni menjawab tak RQ yang kita nak? Is it the interview protocol that we develop ni at the end of the day align with our RQ or not? Kalau tak align, then we try to change the question that we ask in our interview protocol. Method, kaedah kita guna, approach during the interview session, then we can try and error sebenarnya. Okay? Lagi. Itu specialnya kualitatif. Lagi soalan? Ada tak? Nak habiskan topik?
Okay.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Okay, so next one we proceed with population and sampling. Okay, this is our LO at the end of the session. So you are able to identify the targeted population, or you are able to identify your sampling frame. Kerangka sampling. Okay, sampling frame. You are able to determine the principle and objective of sampling. Kenapa kita nak buat sampling, either in qualitative or quantitative. Determine different types of sampling. Mostly we have a few types lah. Basically in quanti lah banyaknya. Okay, and then you are able to determine the sample size. Okay. Okay, so ini population. So what is population? So yang ni, the population ni referring to the group from which a sample is drawn. Okay, the larger population, the large group that we want to take our sample. Okay. Okay, so a study that involve, again, saya rasa saya dah explain this one. A study that involve the whole population is known as census. Saya dah sebut dah sebelum ni, right? Okay, a study that involve every unit in the population. The name is census. For example, census study, my census. My census tu banci. So nak buat banci ni, kita kena guna keseluruhan member within the population in Malaysia, for example. Okay, so then for example, another example, you conduct a study in one manufacturing organization in which the total employees within the organization is 100. Then you conduct a study that include all the 100 employees. The name is also census. Okay, census ni satu kajian yang kita buat dengan melibatkan keseluruhan ahli dalam populasi. Okay, so there are some cases in which it is very costly in terms of time, money and effort to study all possible members of population. For example, kalau kajian tadi, the second example that I give, okay, if the organization only consists of 100 employees, which is the population, okay, the capital letter N, the population, the number of N dia adalah equals to 100. Okay, to me it is applicable lah to collect the data by involving all the members within the population. But what happen if you are interested to study teachers, secondary school teachers in Malaysia or even in Selangor, secondary school teachers in Selangor. So how many secondary school teachers are there in Selangor? It can be berapa? 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, right? So that's why it is costly to collect the data that involve every members within the population because it is very large. Sedangkan, okay, why do we need to include everybody when a group of members can represent the whole population? Kenapa kita nak collect dekat semua member sedangkan kalau kita boleh dapat satu sampel yang boleh represent the whole population. So that's why dia memperkenalkan kita dengan term sampling, persampelan. Okay, sampling ni adalah kaedah yang digunakan, the technique that we use to select our sample from the population. Okay, so to make them, in order to make sure that the sample that we choose are representative ataupun generalizable to the whole population, so we need to follow steps by step lah. Dia ada prosedur dia. Okay. So kalau dalam quantitative, so differences in sampling in quantitative and qualitative. Dia ada different approach and then dia ada different objective. Okay, so for in quantitative, the main principle in quantitative when we select sample, we need to make sure that it is based on the principle of unbiased and represent the population. Dalam kuanti, kita nak pilih sampel tu, kita tak nak bias. Sebab apa tak nak bias? Kita nak make sure sebab sampel yang kita pilih tu represent. Sebab tu dia tak boleh bias. Bias ni, salah satu bias adalah we select sample that are closer to us. Tak boleh. For example, when you are working in Putrajaya, then you select your sample from Putrajaya. So it is already biased actually. Okay, and then another reason why you select Putrajaya because it is because it is very cheap. Reduce cost, it is close to you, cut cost. Okay, but in qualitative, okay, it is depending on the ease in accessing the potential respondents. Your judgment that the person has extensive knowledge related to the studied phenomenon. Kalau dalam qualitative lain, okay, we approach the respondent according to the availability of our respondent. How much the easier we assess our respondent, and then we know that the respondent can best represent the case that we want to study. Kita tahu yang respondent ni ada knowledge, okay, regarding the topic that we want to discover. Itu untuk quali, memang ada bias, okay, tapi memang itu the best for qualitative. Okay, and then in terms of purpose, for quantitative we want to draw inferences about the group from which you have selected the sample. The purpose that sampling in qualitative adalah we want to pick the sample that can represent the whole population. Representation. We want to make inference from the sample that we collected to the population. Okay, but in qualitative, the main objective is to gain in-depth knowledge about a situation. event, episode, or to know as possible about different aspect that of an individual on the assumption that the individual is typical of the group and hence will provide insight into the group. Sebab dalam kualitatif kita nak kaji detail. That's why kita pilih orang yang kita yakin tahu, banyak tahu tentang fenomena tersebut. Okay. And then in terms of sample size determination, okay, for quantitative study, it is based on guided by a predetermined sample size. Before, maksudnya for quantitative study, before we enter the field, before we collect our data, we already need to determine how much minimum sample needed. Dalam quantitative, in quantitative, it always said that the large sample size is always better. Sebenarnya kalau kita dapat collect data daripada the whole population, it is the best. Itu yang terbaik sebab takkan ada error. Cumanya dalam situasi tertentu it is impossible for us to collect the data by using the whole unit within the population. Ada case tersebut. Okay? But in qualitative, it is depend on point of data saturation. Kalau dalam kualitatif, number of sample depend on the data saturation point. Ketepuan data. What does it mean by data saturation? Data saturation means that if the recently collected data already repeat the answer given or the data given by previous researchers. By previous informant. That's, at that stage, we know that our data already saturated. Okay, data ketepuan data ni maksud dia bila data yang kita dapat untuk responden terbaru ni, terkini yang kita ada ni sama dengan data yang kita dah collect, data yang diberikan oleh informant sebelum ni. Contohnya, for example, okay, today we collect the data from the fifth respondent. The first, second, third, and fourth ni already completed. Now on the fifth respondent. Okay, and then after we transcribe, after we analyze the data, we found out that the answer given by the fifth respondents already repeat the answer given by the four earlier informant. So then we can say that our data already saturated, therefore we can stop the data collection. Faham? Is it clear? Clear tak? Clear ke tak clear? Apa itu data saturation?
Clear.
Good. Okay. Then in terms of sampling procedure, for quantitative, as much as possible, we need to apply randomization. Randomization ni apa? Apa dalam bahasa Melayu Saya terlupa lah term dia. Rawak. Betul. Seboleh-bolehnya kita nak make sure we select our sample based on randomization, random secara rawak. But what does it mean by random? InsyaAllah kita tengok sekali lagi. Okay, but why random? Because we want to avoid bias. Okay, randomization ni we secure or we ensure that every member within the population has similar chance. Bila kita kata similar chance, 50-50%, 50 to be involved, 50 not to be involved in the study. Semua orang ada chance yang sama, semua orang ada peluang yang sama untuk terlibat dan untuk tidak terlibat dengan kajian. Okay, itu randomization. We ensure that everybody has equal chance to be involved in the study. But meanwhile, for qualitative, the sampling procedure is based on purposely select information-rich respondent, which is referring to non-probability. Ataupun qualitative researcher dia tak suka guna term-term kuantitatif ni, probability, non-probability dia tak suka. Dia suka term purposive sampling. Persampelan bertujuan. Okay, sebab kita pilih orang or we choose respondent that can best explain about the phenomenon, that has extensive information regarding the phenomenon. Kita pilih orang tu. Okay? Faham Purpose dua-dua berbeza. Okay, first we proceed with sampling in quantitative research. Okay, so first saya kenalkan dulu dengan perkataan unit of analysis. Unit of analysis. First, sebelum tu anak dia lagi, sampling frame. Okay, kerangka persampelan. Sampling frame defines the population from which the sample will be drawn and to which the sample data will be generalized. So sample frame ni, you need to identify who are your population and then how many are the members within your population. Siapa populasi kita dan bilangan dia berapa. Itu sampling frame. Okay, kerangka persampelan. Siapa kita punya populasi dan berapa. Okay, so unit of analysis is the major entity that you are analyzing in your study. So unit of analysis is referring to the unit dalam populasi tersebut. Okay, so it is the analysis you do in your study that determines what the unit is. Okay, for example, nak nampak, if you are comparing the children in 2 classrooms on achievement test score, so the unit is the individual child because you have a score for each child. Unit kalau dalam case yang first ni, our unit of analysis is individual child. Okay, kanak-kanak tu. Then if you are comparing the 2 classes on classroom climate, for example, your unit of analysis is the group. In this case, the classroom lah, sorry. Okay, so dalam case ni because the interest is we want to compare between 2 classroom. So our unit of analysis is classroom. So what I can say is the unit of analysis ni is referring to whom, okay, your findings belongs to, or the conclusion of your study belongs to. Bila kita nak buat conclusion nanti, conclusion kita ni kat siapa? Is it based on individual? Is it based on group? Is it based on organization? Is it based on sector? So it depends on the setting of your study. Faham Unit of analysis ni macam mana nak tentukan? Bila kita nak tengok macam mana, bila kita buat kesimpulan tadi belongs to whom? Belongs kepada siapa? Individual workers ke, individual employees ke, the organization ke, the group ke? Okay, so itu kita punya unit of analysis. Any question? Sampling frame, unit of analysis. Ada? Tak ada? Clear Dia dua je, betul-betul clear ataupun blur. Okay, so this one regarding census. So census referring to a study in which all members of a population are included. Okay, so it is more accurate than the sample method sebenar-benarnya. Census ni dia sangat accurate lah sebab kita measure the actual population. Okay, so it is feasible and desirable when studying small population. Okay. So ignore anything to do with significant or random sampling when creating your model. So bila kita buat kajian census ni, sebab dia melibatkan the whole population, the whole member within the population, so kita tak adalah perkataan random sampling apa semua ni, tak ada. Okay, memang kita dah tahu group tu, then we approach that group. Okay, so when you conduct a census study, inferential statistics are not needed when analyzing the result of a census because there is no sampling error. Statistik ni kita pakai bila? Bila kita pakai statistik ni bila kita buat kajian yang menggunakan sampel. If you may recall, the value that we derive from the population, the name is ni tak sampai lagi. Kelas statistik tak datang lagi tak? Tak apa. Sekejap lagi saya explain balik. Okay, so dia ada term dia okay, tak apa. Yang penting ingat ni when you collect your sample from the whole population, okay, so it is not needed for you to use inferential statistic. Apa inferential statistic ni? For example, t-test, one-way ANOVA, two-way ANOVA, multiple linear regression, simple linear regression, itu inferential statistic. Sebab apa kita dah tak pakai? Sebab memang kita dah guna the whole population, dah tak ada error. Di statistik ni sebenarnya kita pakai sebab ada error tu, sampling error. Okay? Clear Okay, sample. So samples ni we use when it is impossible for us to collect the data for the whole member within a population. So that's why we use sample. Okay, so sample allow researchers to examine the characteristics of the population. Okay, so a sample can be defined as a group of relatively smaller number of people selected from a sample for investigation purpose. Okay, kita tentukan daripada the whole, for example, 10,000 secondary school teachers in Selangor, then we pick a few sample, for example, 100 or 120 or 130 to represent that 10,000 secondary school teachers. Boleh? Faham Boleh Sample ni siapa Okay. So ini dia punya perkaitan. Okay, so for example, the left side ni is our population. So this is the one that we want to know about. Okay, our population. Okay, and then we randomly pick. Okay, sorry, before that. Okay, any values that derive from the population, the name is parameter. Any values that derive from the population, the name is parameter. Kalau and then after we apply to choose a sample from the population ni, we apply randomization. Randomization macam mana nak buat? Okay, my question. Okay, if let's say lah your study involve, you want to conduct one study which involve UPM postgraduate student. Contoh. Okay, UPM postgraduate student. So what you do to collect your data, okay, you stand at the guardhouse. Everybody, every postgraduate student that pass through the gatehouse, and that day you distribute the questionnaire. Okay, my question, does it consider to be random?
Yes.
Random tak apa, lagi saya bagi lagi satu contoh lain. Okay, you have one WhatsApp group which consists of all secondary school teachers in Malaysia. Contohnya, ada satu WhatsApp group dan dalam semua member dalam tu semuanya adalah secondary school teachers in Malaysia. Then you are interested to study them, then you share the link of your questionnaire in the WhatsApp group. Does it also considered to be randomization?
Tak.
What are the differences with the first and second step? What are the differences with the second example and the second example?
Because the first step, you don't know who will be entering the main gate of UPM. So it could be postgraduate, or it could be undergraduate, or it could be worker. So no specific person lah.
Tapi saya dah cakap dah tadi, every
postgraduate yang lalu. Tapi bukan semua postgraduate yang lalu gate tu it could be yang lalu tu mungkin ada undergraduate. So kalau undergraduate kita tak bagilah dia. Kita bagi, tanya you undergraduate ke postgraduate. Kalau dia kata undergraduate, okay next. You know, that is macam tu lah. But then kalau yang WhatsApp group for the second example tu, because that one memang tu cikgu, that is your punya, memang you punya population. So that is not considered as random selection anymore. That's my opinion lah.
Okay, so what happened if in the first case on the first case, so I distribute the questionnaire on Monday contohnya. Okay, in which supposedly every postgraduate student got class at that time, and then I expect that every postgraduate student should pass through the guardhouse at that day. But what happened if that on that day Anissa unable to attend the class because she got headache? What happened? Dia akan tricky. What happened? Ada jawapan? So sebenarnya either the second or the first or second, it is non-random. It's not random. Randomization you should choose. That's why dalam qualitative, quanti, we need to predetermine everything. Who's going to be chosen, who's going to participate in our study. Okay, kita kena pilih daripada awal. Okay, macam mana nak pilih daripada awal? First, we need to know who are our population. We need to get the list, the whole list of the member within the population. Kalau 10,000 tadi 10,000, then we need to get the whole list of the 10,000 secondary school teachers. Ataupun for the postgraduate student, we need to get the whole list of postgraduate students in UPM. That's the first step in randomization. Okay, bila kita stand dekat guard house tadi dan kita bagi dekat postgraduate student yang lalu depan kita, what happen kalau ada yang tak dapat datang itu sebab sakit perut, sebab sakit kepala, sebab anak tak sihat and so on. Maksudnya study kita dah tak based on 50-50 chance, not equal chance to be involved. Sebab tu kita kena secure the equal chance to be involved ni from the very beginning. We get the full list. From the full list, we select who's going to be involved in our study. Dan lepas tu baru kita contact that person. Itu baru randomization. So dua-dua case tadi bukan randomization. The name is convenient. Convenient. Okay? Okay, so tak apa, hak tu discuss tak lagi. Tapi saya introducekan dulu. Okay, so any values that derive from the sample, the name is statistics. Sebab tu asal usul statistik tu. Okay, statistik ni adalah numbers or the values that has been derived from the sample. Okay, value that we derive from the population, the name is parameter. The value that we derive from the sample, the name is statistics. Okay, so statistik tu apa? Nombor atau nilai yang kita dapat daripada hasil persampelan. Okay, so for example, when you go through any statistic book that you can see a few differences or variations in the symbol. For example, representing mean. Kalau mu ni referring to mean juga, but mean for the population. Okay, but kalau X bar representing the mean juga, but the mean for sample. Ni contoh. Ada lagi nanti. Kalau you attend kelas statistik nanti jumpa lagi. Okay, you akan jumpa lagi. Okay. Okay. So sampling, what is sampling? Sample dah, sample ni group yang kita pilih daripada small sample, small group yang kita pilih daripada the whole population. Sampling, sampling ni referring to the process through which a sample is extracted from a population. Proses macam mana kita extract sampel daripada populasi, itu namanya sampling, persampelan. Okay. So the more the sample is representative of the population, the higher is the accuracy of the inferences and better are the result generalizable. Sebab tu dalam ni kita kena secure bukan salah satu teknik yang kita nak make sure yang the sample is representative is by using randomization, random sampling. Okay, a sample is said to be representative when the characteristics of elements selected are similar to that of entire target group, target population. Okay, so the results are said to be generalizable when the findings obtained from sample are equally true for the entire target population. Okay, but sampling process ni may encounter the problem of systematic errors and sampling bias. Ada dua. Bila kita buat sampling ni memang dia takkan lari daripada dua jenis error. The first one, systematic error. The second one, sampling bias. Systematic error refers to the incorrect or false representation, okay, of the sample caused by over-representation of one characteristic and or under-representation of the others. For example, the case of drug addict in Kuala Lumpur, for example. We are interested to study the number of drug addict in Kuala Lumpur. Okay, so then we collect our data. Okay, how much we confirm that the respondent involved in our study are those who originated from Kuala Lumpur, not the migrant. Itu error, dia boleh jadi. Sebab kat Kuala Lumpur kita tahu dah berapa persen je orang yang asal Kuala Lumpur. The rest tu can be from other states yang become the drug addict but stay in Kuala Lumpur. Itu salah satu error yang mungkin berlaku dalam quantitative, what we said in sampling in quantitative. Okay, error tu. Sebab kita tak boleh nak kaji sampai tahap tu. Okay, tapi kita kena aware that might be the error. Okay, apa dah? nanti kita break kejap untuk solat maghrib dan kita datang balik kalau tak cukup hari ni, then meaning that we need to have one replacement class lah. Nanti next week ke, boleh? Kita cari satu. Boleh Kalau tak cukup Okay, next one is sampling error. Sampling bias is said to occur when the selected sample does not truly reflect the characteristic of population. Possible juga. We already apply the randomization, okay, but still it is not representative to the whole population. Ada juga macam tu. But nothing we can do. Tapi what we can do, memang this one kita tak boleh nak buat apa. But we just aware that there are two errors that might exist. First one, systematic error. Second one, sampling bias. The sample that we select ni, it is actually not representative the whole population. It just kita terpilih, kita terambil sampel yang dominant, and then which is the dominant characteristic does not represent the whole population. Dia boleh jadi, okay? Okay, so when we do the sampling, bila kita nak buat persampalan, there are a few things that we need to consider. The first one, sample size. How much minimum sample that we need in our study. Okay, itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, the representativeness and parameters of the sample. The third one, access to the sample. Is it accessible or not? Sampling strategy to be used. Strategi persampalan yang nak digunakan. Bila kita nak buat persampalan, benda pertama yang kita tahu adalah sample size. Berapa yang kita perlukan? From the 10,000, how many sample that we need? Kena tentukan. Okay? Okay, so macam mana nak tentukan? There are few methods to determine sample size. Okay, so ni the foundation dulu. Foundation for sample size determination. But when you go through the literature, and there are a lot of consideration that will be presented to determine your sample size. The one that I presented here today is just a few from those. Okay, so antaranya yang banyak digunakan adalah the Cochrane formula. Cochrane 1977 formula. Okay, sample size determination formula. Okay, so in which according to Cochrane, there are two key factors. The first one, margin error. Okay, margin error. Margin error referring to the risk the researcher is willing to accept in the study or the error the researcher is willing to accept. Okay, they refer to pada error. Berapa banyak kesilapan yang kita boleh terima. Is it 5% or 1%? Dia biasanya dekat-dekat dengan lebih kurang alpha ni. Sometimes lower than alpha. Okay. The second one is alpha level. Alpha level ni referring to the level of acceptable risk the researcher is willing to accept that the true margin of error exceeds the acceptable margin of error. Ni kira yang last yang kita boleh terima. Margin bawah sikit, alpha atas sikit. Okay. Okay, so acceptable margin of error. So the general rule relative to acceptable margin of error in educational research and so is 5% or 3% according to Craigie and Morgan. Dua je, 5% or 3%. Okay, dua. Ataupun below 5% tu bolehlah according to Craigie and Morgan ni. Okay, dia kata, for categorical data 5%, for continuous data 3%. Yang ini yang diproposkan oleh Craigie and Morgan. If our variables are categorical variable, then we can use 5%. If our data are based on the continuous data, then we can use 3%. 3% error. Okay, so for example, a 3% margin of error would result in the researcher being confident that the true mean of a 7-point scale is within plus minus 0.21, which is 0.03 times 7 point. Okay, 0.03 ni darab dengan 7 Likert scale. Contohnya, for example, in our study, we are interested to use 7-point Likert scale, 7. Okay, so to 7 multiplied by 3% equals to plus minus 0.21. Okay, and then, okay, for a dichotomous variable, we use a 5% margin of error, which is result will result in the researcher being confident that the proportion of respondents who were male was within the plus minus 5% of the proportion calculated from the research sample. Yang ni untuk untuk categorical data kita tak perlu darab sebab dia tak ada like scale. Okay, dia categorical. Okay, so researcher may increase these values when a higher margin of error is acceptable, or may decrease these values when a higher degree of precision is needed. Boleh increase. Tapi ini yang dicadangkan 5% or 3%. Okay, next one, alpha level. So alpha level is what recommended by Airy, Jacobs and Rezaviah 1996 is either 0.05 or 0.01. Up to you. Mana satu nak guna? Up to you. Provide your own justification. Why 0.01 or why 0.005? Okay, in Cochrane formula, the alpha level is incorporated into the formula of utilizing the t value for the alpha level selected. For example, t value for alpha level 0.05 is 1.96 for sample size above 120. So biasa kalau kita guna ni, confidence level 0.05 ni, dia akan t value dia akan jadi 1.96 automatic. Okay, and then researchers should ensure the use of correct t value when their research is involved smaller proportion. For example, if you use the t value alpha 0.05 and a population of 60 is 2, dia akan berkaitlah dengan bilangan sampel ni. Okay, so in general, level of alpha level of 0.05 is acceptable. Boleh pakai 0.05. Okay. Then kalau in certain case, then you can apply 0.01. Okay, mana-mana pun boleh ni Biasanya 0.05 lah. Okay, next one, variance estimation. Okay, so Cochrane lists down 4 ways of estimating population variance for sample size. Ada empat cara nak tentukan variance populasi. Okay, so first, macam mana kita nak buat? First, take the sample in 2 steps, okay, and use the result of the first step to determine how many additional responses are needed to attain an appropriate sample size based on the variance observed in the first step. Kita collect dulu data, kita we conduct a two series of data collection, and then we determine the variance for the second data collection based on the first one. Okay. And then ataupun kita boleh guna, we can determine the variance estimation ni based on the pilot study result. Okay, the third one, we can use data from previous study of the same or a similar population. Boleh juga. Macam mana kita nak tentukan variance ni? The last one, estimate or guess the structure of the population assisted by some logical mathematical result. Yang ni paling susah. Okay, the most practical one, number 2 and number 3. Okay, pilot result and then use data from previous studies. Okay. 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 Ini tak apa. Okay. Ni macam mana nak kira ni tak apa. Okay. Tak apa. Saya nak tekankan lain ni. Ni dah tahu tak? Types of errors ni dah tahu tak? Yang ni. Types of error ni tahu dah? Saya rasa saya dah present kot ni. Belum Anybody? Saya rasa macam dah share kot types of errors ni dalam hypothesis. Ada tak? Kita ingat dah?
Rasa macam share dalam kelas data.
Kelas data yang kat sini tak ada. Okay. When we study about when we are going to determine our sample, okay, we need to identify the errors that exist in our sample. Okay. So to determine so these are the criteria. Okay, secara logiknya. So this is the way to determine either which errors exist in our data set. Okay, so we infer our decision ni based on null hypothesis. Okay, we infer our finding or we refer our result based on null hypothesis. Okay, even though earlier I introduced you to the 2 types of hypothesis. Okay, but the one that we use to test to be tested is research hypothesis. Okay, if let's say we conduct one study, okay, and then we provide our null hypothesis, okay, and then if let's say the finding that we obtained indicated that our null hypothesis is false, okay, bila kita buat kajian, kita dapati null hypothesis kita ni salah. Maksudnya finding kita ni different from our null hypothesis. Therefore, we reject the null hypothesis. Do we make a right decision or wrong decision? Based on our, we made a
Right.
correct decision. Apa tu, kita dapat data kita bertentangan ataupun buktikan yang null hypothesis kita salah, therefore we reject the null hypothesis. So we make the right decision, we make the correct decision. What happened? Okay, after we obtain the result, we found out that our result is similar to our null hypothesis. Okay, but then our decision is we fail to reject null hypothesis. Is it we made a correct decision or wrong decision? Our null hypothesis is true, then we fail to reject null hypothesis. Do we make a right decision or wrong decision? Null hypothesis kita betul. We fail to reject. We fail to reject maksudnya kita terimalah null hypothesis tu. Betul ke salah decision kita?
Betul.
Betul. Decision kita betul.
Data tidak dapat membuktikan.
So betul lah. Dia betul dan kita tak reject dia. So dia betul lah. So kita buat keputusan yang betul. What happen if our null hypothesis is true but we reject null hypothesis? Null hypothesis kita betul, which is supported by our finding. Our finding support our null hypothesis, but we reject null hypothesis. Do we make a right decision or wrong decision?
Wrong decision.
Wrong decision. So when we make the wrong decision at this state, the name is type 1 error. Type 1 error ni, it happen when we reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true. We reject null hypothesis, tapi sebenarnya dia betul. Okay, the name of error is type 1 error. The second one is our null hypothesis is wrong. Our null hypothesis, we get our finding, and then it is supposedly against the null hypothesis, okay, which is false hypothesis, but we fail to reject null hypothesis. Do we make a right or wrong decision? Our null hypothesis is wrong. Okay, but we fail to reject null hypothesis.
So salah
Wrong
error
decision.
lagi lah.
Apa dia?
Salah
Wrong
lagi lah.
decision.
Salah. Wrong decision. So this time the name is type 2 error. Type 1 error happen when we reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true.
True.
Itu
Type
type 1
2
error.
error.
Type 2 error. Our null hypothesis is wrong, but we cannot.
But we fail to reject.
We fail to reject.
Okay,
Kita tak
okay.
boleh reject. We do not have ample evidence to reject the null hypothesis. Okay.
Is it because our data?
Possible. Our data, the procedure that the design that we select, the data collection procedure, our responder, dia boleh jadi error tu kat mana-mana, tapi kita tak tahu kat mana.
Is it possible to correct the error? To
Ada.
make a correction? Oh, ada. Okay.
Ada, nanti kita tengok. Okay. So, macam mana kita to reduce these two error ni, one of the way that we can reduce is by determining our sample size. The method that we use to determine our sample size. Salah satunya start daripada macam mana kita tentukan bilangan sampel yang kita perlukan. Belum lagi pilih, tentukan dulu bilangan sampel yang kita perlukan. Okay, sample size determination. There is no clear-cut answer to what constitute an adequate or sufficient size for a sample. Tak ada. Tak ada satu pun penentuan size sampel yang kita boleh gunakan untuk semua keadaan. Tak ada. Dia banyak kriteria. Okay, continuous data is said to require smaller sample size compared to categorical data. Nah, ini salah satu school of thought lah, dia kata nak tentukan sample size, kalau data kita continuous, bilangan sampel dia lebih kecil berbanding dengan categorical data. Tapi dia tak kata berapa. Okay, according to Frankel, Wallen and Hugh in 2008, okay, if you conduct a descriptive study, you need at least 100 sample. If you conduct a correlational study, you need at least 50. If you conduct an experimental research, you need 30 for each group. Kalau experimental memang kita tak perlukan banyak sebab susah nak control. At least 30. Okay, kalau correlational 50, for descriptive 100. Ni contoh general guideline. Okay, shall we go to our Maghrib prayers first and then we come back after 10 minutes? Boleh datang balik selepas 10 minit. Okay, see you after 10 minutes Dah ada ke? Belum?
Ada dah doktor.
Okay. So this is the sample size formula for proposed by Cochrane for continuous data. Okay, the sample size formula is N naught equals to T squared times S squared divided by D squared. Okay, so where T equals to value for selected alpha level of 0.025 in each tail. Okay, equals to 1.96, dia default value. Okay, default value. Kalau kita guna alpha 0.05 and then we decided at 2 tail, then we divide the 0.05 to by 2. So equals to 0.025 for each tail. So equals to the T value ni will be equals to 1.96. Okay, default. Dia memang ni value dia. Tak, 1.96. Okay, and then S equals to estimate of standard deviation in the population, which is 1.167. Where did we get this? For example, for continuous data, it is proposed that ni dia punya calculation ya. Estimate of variance division for 7-point scale. For example, in our study, we want to use 7-point Likert scale. So 7-point scale lah. Okay, so calculated by using 7. Okay, divided by 6 number of standard deviation that include almost all. 7 divided by 6. 7 divided by 7 divided by 6. For example, if you use 5 like scale, then you divide 5 divided by 4. 5 bagi 4 kalau kita guna 5. Okay. And then D equals to acceptable margin of error for mean being estimated, which is equals to 0.21. Okay, which is how to calculate 7 divided by margin of error proposed by Craigie and Morgan for continuous data, which is 3%. Okay, so 7 bahagi dengan 0.03. Sorry, bukan bahagi, darab. 7 times 0.03. 7 times multiplied by 0.03 equals to 0.21. Okay, dapat tak? Okay. Okay, so for example, assume that a researcher has set the alpha equals to 0.05 and plans to use a 7-point scale. Okay, dia nak guna 7, skala 7. Okay, and then error 3%, standard deviation equals to 1.167. So we just plug in the value into the equation. Okay, so kalau kita guna 0.05, so we divide by 2 tail. Okay, each tail 0.025 equals to 1.96. So T ni equals to 1.96. 1.96 squared times by 1.167 squared. Okay, 1.167 squared divide by 7 times 7 multiplied by 0.03 squared. Okay, so equals to, we just plug in the value, then equals to, the answer is 118. Betul tak? Cuba kira. Ada anybody got the calculator? Cuba kira. Dapat tak? Dapat? 118. Ada siapa-siapa kira? Help me to validate. Ada? Apa tak?
Baru jumpa kalkulator. Sekejap, baru jumpa kalkulator.
Oh, calculator. Okay. Baik, 118.
Dapat doktor.
Okay, so the required sample size for the first step calculation is 118. So for a population, if let's say in our population we got 1679, so the minimum required sample size is 118. For our analysis to be valid, okay, in our sample, okay, the final sample should be 118. Bila kita nak buat data analisis nanti, kita kena pastikan dalam tangan kita ada 118 respon daripada responden. Faham? Based on first equation ni. Okay. Next one. Okay. Cochrane proposed another formula, another correction formula if the sample size exceed 5% of the population. Therefore, nak tahu if you want to know either the earlier recommended sample size exceed the population or not, exceed the 5% or not, we need to calculate first. Kena calculate dulu, dia exceed ke tak 5%. So how to calculate? 1679 times 0.05, 5%. So equals to 84. Kalau supposedly, kalau 5%, dia akan, kalau exceed 5% ni dia akan jadi 84. Sebab in our case ni dia dah dapat 118. So already exceed the 5% ni of the population. Faham tak? Kalau 5% from the population supposedly equals to 84 respondent. Tapi the proposed sample size here 118 already exceed the 84. Therefore, Cochrane suggest correction formula to be applied. Kita kena applykan pembetulan daripada sample size tadi. So the correction formula equals to n equals to n naught divide by 1 plus n naught divide by population. So n naught ni equals to the earlier recommended sample size, which is 118 divide by 1 plus 118 divide by our population 1679. Okay, cuba try to plug in the values. Okay, try to reconfirm. Do we get similar answer 111? Faham tak macam mana nak kira 5% ni? Faham How to get the 5%? Boleh? Dapat tak? 111.
Dapat.
Okay, good. Okay, so again, so these procedures result in the minimum return sample size, which is mean before we proceed with the actual data analysis, this is the number, this is the minimum sample size that we need to have in our hand. Tak boleh kurang. Dia mesti sekurang-kurangnya 111 kena ada dalam tangan. Okay, if a researcher has a captive audience, this sample size may be attained easily. However, since many educational and social research studies often use data collection methods such as surveys, online survey, another example, and other voluntary participation methods, the response rates are typically well below 100%. Okay, biasanya, sebab tadi kita kata kita nak 111. Kalau kita distribute, if let's say we distribute 111 to our respondent, rarely found that a study will collect back 111 response rate. Betul tak? Betul, 111 respon. Quite impossible lah. Biasanya we might receive 1 or 2 missing, at least. So the question now, how many that we should increase from the suggested sample size? Sebab tu Salkin 1997 recommended oversampling when he stated that if you are mailing out surveys or questionnaire, count on increasing your sample size by 40% to 50% to account for lost mail and uncooperative subject. Ini Salkin yang recommend. Bila kita dah dapat tadi the minimum sample size is 111, Salkin recommend oversampling. Sebab apa? Sebab kita takut akan ada mail yang kita tak dapat, questionnaire, respon yang kita tak dapat. Sedangkan minimum sample size kita kena ada adalah 111. So before we distribute, we need to increase or oversample our sample to 40 or 50%. Okay. And then Fink support, dia kata oversampling can add cost to the survey, but it is often necessary. Sebab kita tambahkan sampel. Biasanya 111 tu dah cukup. Tapi kita tak boleh nak secure yang kita akan dapat balik 111. Jadi kita perlukan lebih. Okay, Cochrane stated that a second consequence is, of course, that the variances of estimates are increased because the sample actually obtained is smaller than the sample target. Tak apa, ni tak apa. Okay, ni tak apa. Ni tak. Okay, ni saya nak fokus kat ni Okay, so therefore, for example it was anticipated. Tadi dia kata 40 to 50%. Okay, but another consideration that you can make is by referring to past study. What are the anticipated rate, response rate based on past study yang kita boleh gunakan untuk justify how many percentage or how many oversampling that we want to increase in our sample. Okay. For example, it was anticipated that by past study that a response rate of 65% would be achieved based on prior research experience. Tak kira lah kalau you contohnya in your study you want to use online survey. So the medium that you want to use is online survey. Then you refer to past study that also use online survey. So what are their response rate? So you use that as justification to increase or to oversample your sample. Boleh? Faham Dapatkan respon rate tu daripada kajian lepas. Okay. So given a required minimum sample size earlier which is 111, so we apply the following calculation. Okay, so the anticipated response rate is 65%. Okay, so where N2 equals to sample size adjusted for response rate. Okay, so minimum sample size, the correct one is 111. So we just plug in into the equation, the corrected sample size divided by the anticipated response rate. 111 divided by 0.65. So we got the 171. 111 bahagi 0.65 bahagi 65%, kita dapat 171, 171. So this is the final sample that we need to distribute to our sample. Okay, this is 171 should be the final number of sample that we distribute to our population in the hope that at the end of the day we have at least 111 in our hand. Faham? Faham So kalau boleh bila buat kajian kuantitatif nanti, when you conduct a quantitative study, after you determine the sample size and then if let's say the proposed sample size is 119, please do not use 119 to distribute your result. Any number that you increase, you must justify why. And then how you increase it. Kena letak kalau dalam quantitative. You cannot simply propose or you cannot simply increase. For example, the minimum required sample size is 111. But without any justification, you increase your sample size to 200. It cannot be like that in quantitative study. Tak boleh. You kena justify. Kenapa increase sampai 200? Daripada 119 increase sampai 200. Kena justify. Kena ada justification. Kenapa? Salah satu justification yang you can provide is by referring to past study, refer to their response rate. If you use similar method with them. Guna macam ni, contoh. Faham Clear? Ada soalan?
Berapa response rate, doktor? Berapa study yang kita kena refer?
Depend. I thought it's only one already enough. For example, you want to conduct your study among secondary school teacher, for example. Secondary school teacher. So you refer to past study that also use secondary school teacher, and then in your study you want to apply face-to-face questionnaire distribution. Contohnya, memang nak pergi jumpa depan-depan. So you refer to the same method. Past study that you apply the same method to the similar population. Then you check their response rate. Satu pun cukup. At least you got support from past study. Faham Boleh this one sebab banyak sangat your senior buat mistake kat sini. Dia biasa dia propose sample size tu cantik dah. Okay, tapi dekat final result tiba-tiba result dia ada 300. The proposed minimum sample size 111 tapi the final result dekat sample dekat actual study tu dia ada 300. So dia tak boleh lari macam tu, dia kena ada Y. Kita dapat, macam mana kita dapat 300 tu? Daripada 111, macam mana kita increasekan kepada 300? Faham Kita kena provide justification. So justification dia inilah maksud dia. Okay, clear Okay. Next one, data sample size for categorical data. Okay, so this is the formula So assume a researcher has set alpha equals to 0.05, plans to use a proportional variable. Okay, level of acceptable error at 5%, and then standard deviation equals to 0.5. So the formula is t squared times pq divided by d squared. Okay, so in this case we just t squared ni we replace by 1.96 squared times 0.5 times 0.5. Okay, so divide by 0.05 squared. Ni senang je lah, d squared. Okay, ni plug in je. Ni dia punya explanation kat sebelah ni Okay, so after we plug in the value, okay, for the population 1679, the required sample size is 384. Tinggilah kalau untuk continuous data ni. Continuous data, categorical data, the required minimum sample size will be higher compared to continuous data. Okay. Okay, ni sama formula dia kita calculate either the earlier proposed sample size exceed the 5% of the population or not. Kalau exceed, then we need to apply the correction formula. Okay, ini dia punya correction plug in je the value. Okay, then according to the corrected formula ni, we obtain the sample size equals to 313. Okay, 313. Okay, and then we apply similar procedure. 313 yang minimum yang kita perlu ada. But how much we should increase so that at the end of the day we have at least 330 in hand. Okay, so kita apply method yang sama. Okay, clear Beza sikit je. Okay, another formula to determine your sample size is by using this table prepared by Bartlett, Cochrane and Higgins. Tadi based on formula Cochrane. Ada juga you all boleh tentukan. You can also determine your sample size based on this formula, based on this table. For example, you have the continuous data and then you set your margin error at 0.05, alpha 0.05, alpha 0.05. Okay, and then you know exactly the sample the population in the population of your study. For example, 10,000. Okay, so you follow this criteria, so the proposed sample size will be 119. 119, senang je. Nampak? Ini based on that table lah. And then if you have categorical data, and then you set your p value at equals to 0.5, for example, so then you have in your population you have 1,500. So this is the proposed sample size 306. Boleh? So nak guna table ni kita kena ada bilangan populasi. Hak ni tak apa, kita boleh adjust. Hak ni bilangan populasi you all kena ada kalau nak guna table. Boleh? Ni another strategy lah. Okay, another consideration another formula that you might found table. Another table that you might found in literature, which is Craigie and Morgan table. For those who have the computer device with you right now, you can search for Craigie and Morgan table. Yang ni saya tak masukkan dalam slide saya. The Craigie and Morgan table I didn't propose you to use because okay, macam ni when you run yang ni dengar betul-betul dan kalau boleh ingat. Okay, when you conduct a quantitative study, okay, the selection of your design should tally from the very beginning until the end. Okay, if you refer to the table Craigie and Morgan table, eja dia KREJCIE and Morgan, MORGAN, Craigie and Morgan. If you refer to the Craigie and Morgan table, you refer to the formula on how the Craigie and Morgan come up with the table. Okay, the basis of the calculation is based on chi-squared. Chi-squared. Okay. Basis pengiraan table Craigie and Morgan tu asal dia gunakan chi-squared. Okay. If let's say your study you intended to use parametric statistic. Tahu tak parametrik apa? Analysis that fulfill the requirement, the normality requirement. Ingat tak? Tak sebut Itu data analisis luar. Okay?
Data juga, kelas data juga tu.
So ni dia berkait kat sini, okay? So if let's say in your study you are interested to use parametrik. Tahu tak parametrik ni apa? Siapa tak tahu? Jujur, ikhlas. Okay. If we define in statistik apa? Siapa tadi nak cakap apa? Cepat-cepat.
Tak tahu.
Tak tahu. Alhamdulillah, mai saya cerita. Okay. When you want to analyze your data later, there are few ways that we can determine the type of statistic. One of it is by using the normality as a criteria. What is normality? Your data normally distribute and have this bell shape. Dia ada bell shape ni. Bila kita buat data kita buat taburan, dia ada bell shape. Okay. Data that met the normality requirement, nama dia, the name is parametric. Data that met the normality requirement, the name is parametric. Example of parametric statistic, okay, is t-test. Maksudnya nak guna data analisis ni, data kita kena normal. Okay, macam mana nak tahu normal ke tak? Nanti masuk kelas statistik dia Prof Bahman akan ajar further. Okay, ni saya ajar sikit. Okay, contoh dia t-test. Okay, another example, simple linear regression. One way ANOVA, contoh. Example je, jangan pening tau, jangan stres, contoh je. Sebab nanti you all akan tahu juga, saya kenalkan sikit-sikit. Okay, so parametrik ini adalah analisis bila kita nak pakai, kita mesti fulfill data normality. Macam mana nak fulfill normality, nanti you all akan belajar dalam kelas statistik. Saya tak nak peningkan kat sini lah, sebab bukan interest kat sini. Lagi satu, nama dia adalah non-parametric. Non-parametric is the analysis if you want to use, it does not require normality requirement. Kita tak perlukan data normal. Data tak normal. Data tak normal ni maksudnya skewed, positively skewed ke, negatively skewed ke, semua boleh. Faham Ini non-parametric. Okay, example dia adalah chi-square. I go straight to the point. Chi-square. Chi-square adalah data statistik non-parametric. Okay, refer to our Craigie and Morgan table, which I said that the basis of calculation for Craigie and Morgan table is chi-square, which is non-parametric. Okay, if let's say in your study you want to use parametric analysis, so that's why in this case you cannot use Craigie and Morgan table as a basis to determine your sample size. Faham? Sebab dia dah tak tally. Ada benda yang non-para sedangkan you all nak pakai para. Faham? Tak faham? Faham ke tak? Nak suruh saya ulang? Cepat. Nanti ulang video lah ulang video. You want me to repeat or you want to repeat the recording?
Maknanya tak semualah yang kita boleh pilih nak guna grade C and Morgan tu. Kita kena tengok based on parametric and non-parametric dulu lah.
Yes. You need to refer to the type of statistical analysis that you want to use. If the statistical analysis that you want to use falls under parametric analysis, therefore you cannot use Craigie and Morgan table to determine your sample size. Dia sample size je tapi dia dah tak tally. Bila kita nak pakai parametrik, semua benda kena parametrik. Semua benda kena based on normality, based on analysis parametrik. Okay, sebab tu saya tak letak kat sini graduate and Morgan table. But if you attend another research method class, probably the instructor will share with you lah. But I do not share with you because I thought we have another better option. Cochrane, kita ada table Bartlett ni. Ada lagi lain. Clear Okay, next next strategy that we can use. Okay, next consideration. Other consideration that we can apply to determine our sample size, either we use specific type of analysis. For example, regression analysis. If you use simple linear regression or multiple linear regression analysis, the recommended sample size is n larger than or equals to 5m, 5m, where m equals to number of independent variable. If in your study you have 3, for example, 3 independent variables, so 5 multiplied by 3, 15. So 15 should be enough, should already enough for you as a minimum sample size. Tapi kecil sangat lah. Tapi kalau ikutkan calculation cukup dah. Okay. And then lagi according to Miller and Kunz 1973, dia kata sample size equals to 10m, where n number of independent variable. 10 kalau you ada 3, 10 times 3. So 30 should be enough. Kalau ikut Miller and Kunz ni. Okay. And then this ratio are especially critical in using regression analysis with continuous data because sample size for continuous data are much smaller compared to categorical. Okay, and then there is a possibility that the random sample will not be sufficient if multiple variables are used in the regression model. Kalau this one, tak apa, ni laju sikit lah. Ni another formula. Another formula that you can refer to lah Yang saya nak highlight this one. Okay, there are a few more online sample size calculator that you can download free of charge from internet. The first one, Rawsoft Qualitative. Rawsoft ni dia tak adalah download, but you can access through online. Saya klik. Okay, nampak tak? Tak nampak Saya share balik. Okay, so this is Rawsoft software. Okay, margin error that you set the margin error, confidence level. Okay, you need to know the sample size. You adjust accordingly kat sini. Okay, bila masuk je, then it will provide you with the recommended sample size. Masuk je, plug in je value. Okay, contohnya kat sini tukar kepada 10,000. Dia akan keluar terus. This is Rawsoft. Okay. Boleh You all just plug in the value ni. Dia ada dah ni. Dia punya penerangan. Boleh?
Rawsoft ni dia tak kira if it's parametric or non-parametric Doktor?
Tak ada. The calculation ni based on the population ni. The ratio ni dia come out, the calculation ni is based on ni. Yang kita masuk ni. Dia tak ada sama ada para or non-para. Boleh? Senang je. Ni paling senang. Antara yang paling senang ni. Okay, next one is Qualitative. Qualitative ni quite similar with Rawsoft. Qualitative mana? Stop share. Okay, ni. Ini Qualitative tak keluar ni Qualitative. You also need to know the population. Okay, you set the confidence level. You can decide 90, 95, 99. For example, you choose 99. You insert the population size 15,000, for example, or 1,1966, for example. Okay, margin of error. If your data are categorical, 5. If your data are continuous, then 3. So the required sample size 951. Okay. The next one, the most easiest one. Yang paling saya recommend for the level for master by coursework level. But for master science and PhD, please go for more. For master by coursework, this is the one that I propose. Kejap G power. the most easiest one. This one you can download to your device. Ni kot. Okay, so this is the one. G power. Download according to your device. Ni. Download. You can download and install. Either you use MacBook or Windows. Okay. So the features is, hold on kita cari G power. Ada tak kat komputer saya ni? Tak ingat ada tak hold on Ada. Okay. Ini dia punya features, G power. After you install, you will get this interface. Okay, kita akan tunjuk, dia akan tunjuk ni. Okay, so to determine the sample size by using G power, first you need to know the test family of the statistical that you want to use. For example, the highest level of analysis that you want to use in your study is multiple linear regression. So we use F test. Multiple linear regression, family dia F. Okay, nanti belajar dalam statistik kelas, jangan risau. Test family ni Okay, and then for the statistical test, choose this one. A linear multiple regression fixed model R-squared deviation from 0. Pick this one. Okay, then type of power analysis. Okay, you pick this one. A priori compute required sample size, because this is what we want to determine the sample size by providing alpha, power and effect size. G power ni will help us to determine our sample size based on power. Dia ni based on power ni. Dia gunakan kuasa untuk menentukan jumlah yang kita nak. So to determine the sample size by using G power, we do not need the number, the overall number of population. Kita tak perlu. Kalau Qualtrics dengan Qualtrics and apa tadi lagi satu? Apa lagi satu tadi? Qualtrics and Rausoft. Rausoft tadi we need the population number. But for G power we do not need the population number. Tak perlu. Okay, yang penting kita tahu information ni. Okay, and then we set our effect size. If you locate your cursor, okay, the system will provide you with the guideline. How many? And then what does it mean by the effect size? Okay, you can use 0.002 for small effect size, 0.15 medium and 0.35 large. Up to you which one you want to use. Okay, for example in this case, you propose guna 0.15 medium. Okay, alpha error probability, kalau you decide the confidence level 95, biasanya kat sini dia akan jadi 0.05. Terbalik je, alpha dengan power ni, 1 minus beta. Okay, kalau sini 0.01, so sini akan jadi 0.99. Okay, number of predictors referring to the number of independent variable you have in your study. For example, we have 4 IVs. Okay, so after you insert all this information, you just click calculate. Okay, so this is the total required minimum sample size, 1 to 9. Mudah aja. Okay, boleh Boleh. Senang je dah.
Doktor, number of predictor tadi IV?
Yes, number of predictors referring to the number of independent variable that we have in our study. If you have the direct model, senanglah, just calculate how many independent that you have in your study. But if you run the mediation model, and then if let's say in your mediation model, you have 4 independent variable and 1 mediator, so the total of predictor will be 5. Kalau untuk mediation tadilah, kalau you ada 4 IVs, 4 IVs and 1 mediator variable, so the total of predictor in that model will be 5. Faham? Okay, so depend pada model. So kalau 5, dia akan jadi 138. Boleh? This is the most easiest lah. Okay, any questions so far? So far so good? Good, itu banyak tu saya cadangkan. Hopefully saya tak nampak lah you all guna Graduate and Morgan. Okay, hopefully tak nampak you all guna. Okay, lagi soalan, ada soalan before we proceed to the next topic. 8:48 Memang kena buat satu session lagi, ni tak cukup. Okay, so representative sample. So findings that are representative of the population from which they are drawn so that generalization can be made to the rest of it. Kalau sampel kita tu representative, barulah kita boleh buat generalisasi kepada populasi. Representative means the sample accurately reflect the composition of the population from which it is drawn. It shares similar characteristic from the sample. Dia ada karakteristik yang sama. Sampel kita tu punya karakteristik yang sama dengan populasi. So representative sample ni able to generalize result to the whole population. Okay, our finding are able to generalize the result to the whole population if sample is representative. Pusing-pusing kot tu juga Therefore, to ensure the representative sample, we need to reduce bias to ensure ni sample representativeness ni. Okay, so condition to be fulfilled to ensure the representativeness is random sample. So every member of the population needs to have an equal chance of being represented ataupun be involved in the study or not to be involved. Ini maksud dia random sampling. Apa maksud random sampling? Semua orang ada peluang yang sama untuk terlibat ataupun tidak terlibat dengan kajian. Okay. Kaedah yang saya biasa cadangkan untuk menentukan, sebenarnya untuk menentukan randomization ni there are few techniques. But one of the technique, the easiest technique that I always share to my student is by using Excel. Hold on, let me share my Excel. Saya rasa ni kot yang last hari ni kot. Okay, as what I said, after we already determine our population, we know our population, we know who are our population, then we know how many sample do we need. Kan? Jadi kita dah tahu siapa populasi kita dan kita tahu bilangan populasi kita. Okay, bila kita dah tahu siapa populasi dan bilangan populasi ni, dia sangat senang nanti. Okay, for example, in my case, I state here that the population is 440. Contoh, saya ada 440 populasi saya. Cukup tak 440? Okay. 440. Tapi saya kena tolak satu kot ni. Kejap. Okay, so I got my population is 440. Okay, then after I determine the sample size, the minimum required sample size is the one that I need is tadi berapa? 129. For example, the sample size that after I did the correction and then I consider the response rate, the final sample size that I should distribute to is 129. For example, saya nak kena distribute ataupun nak kena dapatkan 129. Okay, so what I can do is I insert this formula equals to open bracket random. Saya apply formula ni. Salah ni. Okay, equals to random. I insert this formula in the next column. Lagi sekali ke?
Lagi sekali, Doktor.
Sekali. Okay. First, make sure you got the population list. You obtain the population list from the organization. Okay, you already know the required sample size that you need. The next one is you prepare the Excel sheet. Okay, you prepare the population. Next, the next column to the population ni, you insert this formula equals to random, R-A-N-D. This one equals random, R-A-N-D, double click macam ni, you then click enter. Lagi sekali ke?
Cukup.
Boleh dah, boleh dah.
Boleh So next step is, okay, locate your cursor here, you drag this line, you drag this column ni until the last of your population ni. Drag ni. It will give you the random number. Every number created here are different. Tak sama. Ni nama dia random, nombor random. Okay. Faham Dah create ni, dah drag ni, dia akan keluarkan nombor. Nombor ni memang takkan sama. Walaupun kita buat, kita dua guna kolom lain, memang takkan sama. Setiap orang takkan dapat nombor yang sama. Kolom tak sama dan setiap orang pun tak sama. Okay, the next step yang kita akan buat adalah sort this number. Okay, click sort. You choose this column. Click sort. Choose. Up to you. You want to use sort smallest to largest or sort largest to smallest. Up to you. Okay. For example, I want to use sort largest to smaller. I take this one and then I expand the selection. Click sort. Okay. Dah sort dah. You can see, as you can see, the value on your left side change. Betul? Betul? Okay, so now, berapa tadi kita nak? 129, right? The number, the sample that we need is 129. Am I correct? Betul? So now, you select this sample until 129. 129. Alah, lebih pula. So these are the people that you should contact and invite to be involved in your study. The respondent number 160, 140, 143, 97, 368 and so on. Faham? Inilah dia namanya random. Before we collect our data, we already determine who are our sample. Faham? Ini dia nama dia random. Okay, any question? Ada.
Yang doktor masukkan tadi bukan like for example yang kita pergi depan postcard tu bagi dekat orang macam tu.
Yang ni tak kira dia sakit perut ke tak ke hari Senin tu. Kita contact dia, kita tanya dia punya willingness to participate. Kalau dia, for example, respondent number 422 refuse to participate, it's okay. We replace him or her by the next respondent, 228. Okay? Faham Ni maksud dia randomization. Okay, so I thought we stop here, but shall we arrange another class by next week ke? Boleh tak kita arrange satu kelas? Saya tak cukup, tak sempat. But if you want me to share the final exam, sempatlah, bolehlah. Tapi saya ada benda lagi, saya tak habis lagi ni. Nak tahu final exam dulu ke? Ke boleh kita decide dulu tarikh minggu depan? When you will be available? 7 boleh ke? Buat Jumaat?
Pagi ke petang, doktor.
Sekejap 4, 5, 6, 7. Kejap. Saya nak kena tengok sebab minggu depan saya outstation sebenarnya. Kejap saya letak
Jumaat takut travel balik kampung lah
kan?
Orang nak.
Kan? Itulah saya tengok. Hari apa yang paling okey?
Monday?
Itulah saya pun plan Monday juga, but Monday morning it is not possible for me. Kalau malam boleh kot. Sekejap
Monday ada replacement class.
Leadership betul.
Leadership.
Apa dia?
Monday we have replacement class.
Monday dah ada orang booking. Okey, kejap saya tengok kat mana saya letak saya punya travel. Kejap. Kalau kalau Isnin pukul 6 boleh tak? 6.
Dah ada kelas doktor.
Dah ada kelas.
Memang petang juga dia buat Petang juga
Ya.
6, 9.
7, kejap. 7 ni telefon. Okey, pukul 10 kejap 10. Kalau Selasa tak sempat kot. Rabu.
Kalau this weekend doktor?
This weekend this weekend this weekend boleh kot. Ahad Ahad
Tak
pukul apa?
boleh.
Tak boleh. Isnin, Sabtu saya tak boleh. Ahad saya free lah. Tak boleh tapi ada tak boleh Ahad
Ahad ada kelas doktor.
Ahad ada kelas juga, petang juga.
Pagi?
Pagi?
Daripada pagi sampai pukul 4 sampai petang.
Sedihnya, ya Allah. Senin, Rabu. Rabu.
Selasa tak boleh tak?
Selasa saya tak boleh. Selasa berapa bulan?
Khamis?
5 bulan kan? Khamis berapa bulan Khamis berapa bulan
7 bulan.
Khamis Khamis petang boleh tak?
Okay.
So far okey doktor.
Boleh.
Khamis petang. Kita cuba buat Khamis.
Dengan tips exam doktor kan?
Tip exam hari Khamis. Kalau nak hari ni pun boleh, tip exam boleh. Sudah siap dah.
Boleh je doktor. Boleh juga.
Boleh? Hari ni? Nak hari ni?
Doktor nak bagi tips hari ni doktor.
Boleh.
Exam confirm ke 15 doktor?
Boleh? 15, 16. Saya dah set dah. Saya buat dalam
Oh,
Okay.
15-16.
Boleh 15, 16. Buat 2 hari lah.
24 jam, 48 jam.
48 jam betul?
48 jam.
Okey.
Boleh? Ni nak tips ni?
Nak.
Okey. So dia tak boleh share screen.
Before that, Dr.
Masuk,
Nomi,
doktor.
kelas Khamis tu pukul 6
Kita prepare pukul 6 boleh? Tak pun pukul 5.
Okay.
Awal. Kalau boleh pukul 5. Tak nak saya maksa nak elak.
Boleh doktor, tak ada masalah.
5 Okay,
5
pukul 5.
Khamis pukul 5 set.
Khamis pukul 5. Kejap. Saya kena letak ni. Kalau tak lupa. Last nanti.
Sorry, doctor.
Yes.
When is our replacement class?
Will be 7 July at 5 p.m.
Okay, 7 July. Thursday, right?
Thursday, yes, Thursday.
Okay. Okay, thank you, doctor.
To everybody, our replacement class, one replacement class will be on 7 July, okay, at 5 p.m. Okay, exam. Okay, exam. Okay, there are 3 sections, section A, section B, and section C. Okay, so there are 40 question, 40 ke 41 Sekejap, 40 rasa kot. There are 40 question, 40 soalan, there are 40 question, 40 MCQ question for section A. It is based on general knowledge and then it is also based on what we already learned in class. 40 soalan. MCQ question, section A. Tapi saya tak bagilah tips untuk section A ni Boleh? 40 question, MCQ question section A. Section B, it consists of extended multiple choice question. Okay, the format will be in one paragraph and then you need to fill in the blank. Okay, you will be provided with few options which is exceed the number of answer that should be included in the question, but you need to pick. Kena pilih. Contohnya, example, I provide you with 10 answers, 10 jawapan, but the question only 5. Okay, fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Okay, for this section we have 11 questions. 11 soalan. Okay, for this section ni dia ada the first paragraph ni, the first paragraph related to the comparison between qualitative and quantitative research. Apa beza qualitative and quantitative? Okay, the second one related to experimental research designs. Okay, first tadi comparison between qualitative and quantitative. The next one related to experimental research design. Okay, section C, there are berapa soalan kat sini 7 questions, bukan 7, 10 question. 10 soalan. Okay, 10 question. The question ni macam mana nak cakap ni, kan bagi jawapan. Okay, the question ni you need to answer all the question because it is 2 days, 48 hours kan. You need to know about design, the research design, okay, qualitative, experimental, non-experimental, because you will be provided with the case and then you need to select the most accurate research design according to the case. Okay, and then the comparison, not comparison, how okay, the details regarding experimental study, macam mana nak buat experimental tu, the step by step, macam mana nak buat experimental, and then check for how to secure trustworthiness in qualitative. Okay, the steps required or the elements required to secure the trustworthiness criteria in qualitative. Okay, nak cerita lah strategi apa nak pakai tu, semua cerita. Okay, and then the non-experimental research. Okay, you need to describe one of the non-experimental research and then you need to justify when you should apply that specific research design. Okay, and then the comparison between relationship and prediction. Apa beza dia, tu dah spesifik dah tu. And then you need to know on how to calculate the sample size. Okay, the sample size, the formula tu not provided in the question, but based on what we already learned, you just apply it. All the information will be provided. Okay, there are 2 questions on that. Okay, and then okay, and then if let's say in qualitative study, bukan if let's say lah, in qualitative study, explain the role of language, bahasa dalam qualitative study. And then the last question, okay, tadi the role of Language, the role of language in qualitative study. Ni sebenarnya ada dalam lecture note. Ada, answer dia semua ada dalam tu. Carilah. Okay, and then the last question, you will be provided with 5 short situation, and then you need to decide the best qualitative research design according to the, bukan 5, 6. There are 6 short case, and then based on the case, you need to determine the best qualitative research design. Dah, itu sahaja.
Yang last tu yang short situation tu macam the best qualitative tu macam narrative case study. Ya, okay.
Hak tu. Dah. That's all.
Dr. Naomi, how about the Turnitin?
Turnitin? Oh, Turnitin ID, right? For the class?
Yeah.
I will share. Thank you. Ingatkan saya, kalau boleh please post in the group so that I remember. I will try my best to upload all the lecture note, all the lecture recording weekend ni.
Okay.
Separuh tu saya dah masukkan dah. Separuh sikit.
Dr. Nomi?
Yes.
So we need to submit all the assignment about the individual assignment, also the research proposal through the Dropbox, right?
Okay, all the submission date is on the final date exam. Okay, but only for your proposal, chapter 1 to 3, hopefully you can submit the first draft by next week, so that I have some time to read lah. Okay, so I have some time to read. Only proposal.
Through the Dropbox or the PB?
Dropbox. Yes.
How about the individual assignment also Dropbox or just an upload in the PB?
All the assignments are individual, right?
Yeah, individual.
So there is no group assignment. So you just share the Dropbox, the individual folder, and then include all the assignment within that folder. Satu folder je. Only share one folder.
Okay.
Okay.
By next week tu bila last day, Doktor?
Janganlah last day sangat. Janganlah tunggu sampai last, kan lambat pula. Okay.
Itulah nak tahu tu, Doktor.
Kalau ikut last day tu on Saturday lah. On Friday lah. Tapi jangan last day sangat, nanti saya tak sempat. Banyak LH1 dah hantar nama pun saya tak sempat lagi tengok.
Last day exam kan, Doktor?
Last day exam, okay. Dia macam ni, next week is our study week. So within the study week, you submit the first draft of your proposal so that I can give feedback. Okay, so then I have some time to give feedback. So but the final proposal you can submit on the final exam date.
Okay.
Okay, final exam date tu yang final draft. But if let's say you don't want to submit the first draft by next week, it's okay. You can submit directly the final draft, which is on the 60. Then I can give the mark directly lah based on that draft. Boleh pun boleh. But
then we need to submit with Turnitin report, right, Doctor?
Yes. The final tu need to be submitted with Turnitin report. Turnitin tu
how many percent?
25. Shouldn't exceed 25%.
Oh, not more than 25%.
25%, yes.
Okay, Doktor, one more question. Kena buat dalam template yang Doktor bagi tu kan, yang ada cover page, table of content, table of semua tu.
In terms of draft, follow the template that I've shared, but to determine your Turnitin report, you just include the document starting from your chapter 1 until your chapter 3 only.
Okay.
Alamak, Dr. Nomi, I just sent my chapter 1 to chapter 3 with the format, without the cover page, without the abstract.
It's okay, that one is not yet final. But make sure when you submit the draft, you include the title. Itu penting.
The title definitely. I'll write the title.
Kena ada title lah. Kalau tak ada title, macam mana saya nak tahu your phenomenon, okay? Include the title.
Doktor, navigation panel tu kena ada ke? Kena buat?
It is not compulsory, but it is very helpful to me. It is very helpful to me so that I no need for me to scroll down and up. Lenguh tahu tak? Nak scroll down and up ni. Lenguh
Very
jadi.
helpful to me also, Doktor.
Apa dia?
Very helpful to me also.
Yes, navigation pane is very nice and very helpful lah. So it's very easy for us to track our paragraph and everything. Dr. Nomi, last question. The final exam will be in Word version in our Dropbox, right?
I thought I will prepare in Google Form document format kot, Google Form.
Via Google Form.
Tapi kalau Google Form dia boleh save, Doktor. Katalah saya buat separuh hari, saya dapat separuh esok.
Boleh save pula
Tak boleh sebab dia kena ulang balik semua. Dia macam dah hantar separuh. Jangan Syah.
Nantilah format tu nanti kita fikir kemudian. Kok boleh save, nanti saya boleh setting, boleh save ke, nanti saya study dulu Google Form. Okay?
Okay. Sebab nak buat cantik-cantik kalau kat Google susah.
Apa dia?
Doktor, saya terlepas isi attendance lah, Doktor.
Attendance tak boleh share. Tak apalah, nanti saya bukan. No worries.
Okay, thank you, Doktor.
Thank you. Ada lagi soalan?
Saya pun
tak isi.
Ramai pula tak isinya. Tak apa.
Saya pun.
Saya pun.
Ramai putih kelas, Doktor.
Ramai ponting. Okay. Okay, lagi ada soalan?
Capture screen.
Doktor, artikel analisis dengan kritik tu kena submit sekali dengan artikel, Doktor?
Yes. Yes, submit the article. Just include in our Dropbox lah. Submit kat situ je.
Alright.
Boleh? Dah? Lagi? Ada dah?
Terima kasih.
Okay, so we see each other again next week on 7 Julai kan? 7 Julai. Betul, 7 Julai. Okay, at 5 PM.
7 Julai 5. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much guys for today. So truly sorry for the delay today. InsyaAllah jumpa minggu depan. Take care everybody. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Doktor. Thank you, Doktor.
Thank you.